What is up, everyone? It is Grey Fiction here. I want to talk today about The Dark Prince. In my previous video, where I basically said I wrote a graphic novel, which is about the same character, of course, I didn't really delve into the first novel that I wrote. I talked about the comic. I want to talk about that novel that started my writing journey. And before I get into that, I do want to mention that the video where I am coloring a comic page, that was done by an artist from the website Upwork. This isn't a comic page from the graphic novel that I have published. This was one of those failed attempts to find the artist that would basically be the artist to make the comic. But I just wanted to color it because I wanted to see how it looked. Anyway, let's get to the story at hand. I was about 14 or 15 years old when I decided to create the character John. And the reason why I decided that was because I was dealing with things in life, trying to find myself, didn't know how to express myself, and I kept a lot of stuff in because I didn't really know how to talk and tell people what was wrong, because I would always feel like, I guess maybe I would feel like a burden, or I just didn't want to seem weak or something. I don't know, man. I was 15, whatever. So I decided to basically put my thoughts and feelings down on paper or on the computer, like type it, whatever. So that's how basically John came about. In this novel, his name was John Exile, but instead of exile like with like EXILE, I took the E off, and so it was like XILE. And I guess it was supposed to be like the E was exiled from the word. So yeah, it was stupid. But John Exile, that was his original name in like the first time I wrote the story. And the first version of the book, I wrote it in first person. It was like this crazy sci-fi fantasy where basically he kind of has like alter ego, or he was like a vigilante or something like that, and they would call him X, and he has like this blue X on his chest or his shirt or whatever. It was like a black hoodie with like an X on it. He'd had like these weird goggles that kind of concealed his face, and he was an inventor. He had this one thing where it was called the Dreamer, where basically the Dreamer would somehow read your thoughts or your memories, and it would basically, you could project them on a screen, and yeah, basically like you were watching a movie. So that was the type of character that I wrote. Basically, he was like this inventor by day, and at night he was prowling the streets, doing vigilante work, working for like doing like freelance job or odd jobs for like sometimes like crooks, where like maybe he goes out and gets blackmail information on some other government official. It was a lot going on in that version of the story. And then as the story progresses, we get all this sci-fi stuff with like scientific experiments on people to make them superhumans. And he was basically, you got this like this elemental lady. There was a guy who was like half dragon in the story, and John was supposed to be some other unheard of thing as the story was going to progress. That was the first version of it. It was so bad, and it had so many like characters that were getting introduced left and right. You probably wouldn't even know what was going on. We had this crazy dynamic with this character named Gizmo in the story, and he was like this friend, adoptive brother to John, and also he was the son of basically a rich family, basically like a rich guy, and his mother was like this successful, I think she was like an artist or something like that. And the dad, he owned like this big company called GizTech, where they sold like, they were basically he was like the Bruce Wayne of this series, of this story. That's what he was. But he was like a horrible Bruce Wayne. He was like a horrible person. He was a douchebag, basically. After a while, I think I tried to rewrite the story again and lean more, move away from like the superhero cliches, the one-liners, and the comical, the corny comical dialogue that I had him have in the first version, and try to make it a little bit more darker. And that version I kind of stuck with and continued on into book 2, 3, and then I ended up trying to write a 4th, but as I was writing, I think there was stuff going on in my life. I let basically certain people kind of like kill my confidence, and I think I just kind of gave up on the story, which I think I did touch on in my previous video, where I did kind of like give up on the story, and I kind of just shied away from it, because as I reread it, I was like, yo, this is not good. And what's crazy is I put so much time and effort in there when I was like that teenager, and that teenager was super imaginative. He was super passionate about that project. I had like this journal where I would like draw like little sketches of the characters. I had so much lore in this little book that I still have today, crazy enough. And it was just a mess of just writing all over every single page, front and back, even on the basically like the covers. I was writing everywhere in that book, and I had so much stuff in there that I was gonna use for like, I wanted it to be a 10-book series. And like I said, once I got to that 4th book, I started letting certain people that basically made comments kind of kill my confidence in my own story. And eventually I guess I killed that passionate kid as I got older. And I will say I think I tried one more time, but I tried to start over. And I did a 3rd version of John, but it was in 3rd person. And I think I went a slightly different direction. And then I just gave up again, and I let those years pass. And that's when we got to, the story of the previous video, where I was like, I was going to try to make a comic. But I want to talk about where I'm at today, because basically the comic, I loved it. And after I published the comic, my good friend Doug convinced me to try to go back to writing novels. And I tried to do The Dark Prince as a novel. So basically the graphic novel that I wrote, I adapted it into a novel. And I think I made it into 2 books. I published them, which they are available on Amazon, but I found myself once again unsatisfied with the outcome, and basically I dropped that story too. But now I'm trying to reconnect with that part of me back then, because I feel like, even though I feel like I'm a better writer today, I don't feel as ambitious, and I don't feel as creative, because it takes me so much longer to write a single story. Where at that time, I wrote those 3 books. Well, I can't even say 3 books. They were manuscripts. So they were like first drafts for all 3. But I wrote those in a span of 2 years. And then I did, the 3rd person one. Yeah. So I was really driven back then. And a couple months ago, I sat down and reread all those versions of the stories. I saw the flaws, of course, but I also saw the heart and soul. And I decided, I'm going to at least put them out there, because they deserve to just not sit on my drives anymore. And you know, maybe someone will see it and maybe someone will like the video. So, I mean, I said video, will like the story. So yeah. Basically I wanted to make this video to say that, like, sometimes when you kind of lose your way, sometimes you just gotta look back and just remind yourself of the kid who had a goal, he had a direction, and he basically wanted to get there. And that's probably sometimes the best way that you gotta find yourself, is basically reconnect with the kid that you allowed be killed by others. Reconnect with that kid and, you know, don't give up. Anyway, that's all I had to say. Thank you for tuning in every time I post something, and, you know, people interacting, liking, subscribing. You guys kind of keep me going, and I hope that you guys stick with me as I try to basically become a better storyteller and just make a name for myself in this crazy world that we live in. Thank you.